I'm very happy to be here today to talk about the ethics of AI and what can we learn from Asimov three laws of robotics. I'm going to start talking a little bit about me. Um, my name is Patia Callahan. I'm from Venezuela, and I live in the very beautiful Scotland. My background education is computer science in the field of artificial intelligence. Um, I have around 20 years of experience working in the tech industry, and I'm part of the customer experience engineering team at Charles River Laboratories. I'm also an advisor in We and AI, which is a nonprofit organization. And our mission is to create awareness and understanding of how artificial intelligence is part of our daily life. Um, and we work with the population of the United Kingdom. I'm also a volunteer in Code Club Scotland, which is part of the Raspberry Pi Foundation. And what I do is that I run a code club at my local school where I teach kids from 12 to 15 years old how to code. I'm really, really passionate about this program, and especially getting more girls interested in joining us in this industry where um, they're very much needed. Um, I'm also lead at the Google Developer Group Glasgow. And of course, you can connect with me on Twitter, on my LinkedIn, and on my personal website. So that's enough about me. And let's begin. All right, so robots. Let's talk about robots and androids and AI agents, which is my very favorite topic to talk about. So, in pop culture and in sci fi, we have seen some really nice and cute and fun robots, and they can be helpful and reliable. They're loyal. They're usually around to help us improve our quality of life, and of course, to help us get out of trouble, stay out of trouble. Um, and I always when I do this talk, I always say, and I'm looking for someone to be able to build Rosie from the robot from the Jetsons, because every time I have to do my laundry or wherever, I think about her. And if any of you is able to make it happen, please go ahead. A lot of us are willing to pay any price to have such a robot around at home. um, on the other hand, we also have a bunch of really evil robots and AI agents, being, of course, the Terminator, the one everyone thinks about when people is talking about robot apocalypse. And these robots, they have the sole purpose of making humans miserable and to take over the world. And they are cruel, they're merciless, they just want power. In some cases, in some stories, maybe their motives are not that evil, but they still harm humans in order to achieve their goals. And of course, this is a recurrent theme in science fiction, is the good and the bad side of technology. And I grew up reading a lot of stories around this. And when I was a kid, I discovered the greatest sci-fi writer of all times, and his name is Isaac Asimov. So Isaac Asimov started publishing his work around the 1940s, and he wrote around 100 fiction and non-fiction books and short stories, and on topics from science to religion to history to art. He was such an amazing and prolific writer. And my favorite stories um, were those about robots. And they were really clever and entertaining, and they would make you think about the consequences of dealing with these very powerful machines on a daily basis. And of course, Asimov, to be able to write about these interactions between the humans and these very powerful and intelligent machines, uh, he created the famous three laws of robotics. So let's talk about them. All right, so the first law is as follows. A robot might not harm a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Rule number two is a robot must obey orders given by a human unless those orders violate rule number one. So, in other words, a robot cannot be ordered to kill a human being. And law number three, a robot must protect its own existence because, after all, it's an expensive piece of equipment. So it should protect its own existence unless that violates rule number one or number two. So a robot must cheerfully go into self-destruction if he is following an order or to save a human life. In later stories, robots took responsibility of the government of whole planets and civilizations. And Asimov created the zero law, and this law precedes the original three. And it says that a robot might not harm humanity, or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. So these laws have influenced um, our thinking in terms of AI and the creation of sentient machines and how to build them in a way that they will not be a fundamental threat to humanity. And of course, as technology makers, we have to think about how we should program or train machines to make difficult or ethical decisions when we are not around supervising them, and when we are not around telling them what to do. So these discussions really started with Asimov and his three laws, and these laws and all the stories that he wrote around them, people started to realize the possible risks of these of dealing with these machines. But are these laws really the answer for these ethical problems? So no. Asimov actually he didn't see his three laws as the answer. Instead, he used them um, as a base to play with all the things that might go wrong if we implemented them and trusted these laws. So these laws are definitely not enough. So in some of most of his robot stories, he presents certain scenarios where these laws come into play. So, for example, there's a story called Evidence. So, Evidence is about a politician that's running for office, but only humans could legally run for office, and he's accused by the public to be of actually being a humanoid robot. And so, to prove them wrong, in an event, he punches a man in front of everyone, which, if he were a robot, obviously he couldn't do that because of the first law about not harming a human being. But he might have tricked everyone because what if the person that he punched was actually another humanoid robot? So, as you can see, some intelligent systems could realize that there are ways to trick uh, and to use these laws to trick everyone. um, and these laws are definitely not the solution for this problem. And in reality, we are nowhere close to systems that can really understand such abstract concepts like what is a human being, or what does it mean to do harm. But these laws were definitely a starting point to start thinking about the risks and the ethics around artificial intelligence. And they're probably the most famous and influential sci-fi lines of tech policy ever written. All right, so in order to discuss the impact that AI have or can have in our lives, let's stop. Let's stop for a minute and talk about the types of AI. There are several classifications around AI, but this is like the most popular one, and it will help me illustrate why it is so important to have an ethical framework around it. So, all right, the first stage will be machine learning, and it's called artificial narrow intelligence. So, this is what we have right now, and these are systems that are created, artificial intelligence systems that are created and they're programmed in a way that they perform an a specific tasks over a specific domain and set of data. So, for example, an example of this would be an artificial intelligence system that is created to play chess. And as you might know before, in the past, these systems have won against very chess masters and very important players, and they're very good at it, right? But if you take this system and then you bring it to play, let's say, Monopoly, uh, the system wouldn't know how to play Monopoly because it's created just to play chess. So that's what we have right now. We're focused on one area and one problem. All right, so the next stage would be artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And this is called, well, machine intelligence. And this is when an AI system is programmed in a way that it can totally mimic human intelligence and human behavior. And it will be as smart as a human. We haven't reached this stage yet. Some researchers believe that we're not going to reach it. Um, some researchers, they really think that we're heading that way. And then the next stage will be the artificial superintelligence. And this is when the system is programmed in such a way that its decision making ability is superior than humans, and it will be much smarter than the smartest human. um, and it's called machine consciousness. But talking about machine consciousness is really tricky because um, artificial intelligence, like the main goal is to replicate the human brain, the human behavior, and consciousness is a very important part of our intelligence and our existence. And we don't really understand human consciousness. We don't know how it works. Is a big mystery. So how are we going to be able as engineers, or um, how are we going to be able to engineer consciousness in a machine if we don't understand our own consciousness? So um, many people believe that that's simply not going to happen. But again, a lot of researchers, um, they are working actively to reach this stage, and they truly believe that we're definitely going to achieve the artificial superintelligence. Um, so these people that believe that we're going to reach it, uh, they believe also that we have to be prepared for it, because humans, we as humans, we're not going to be able to control a super intelligent AI, because we are not going to be able to prevent these kind of systems, to prevent them to make their own decisions and to upgrade themselves. So what will happen if we actually reach artificial superintelligence? So that stage actually has a name, and it's the technological singularity, or just singularity. And this is when the intelligence of machines will surpass the human intelligence, and it will increase exponentially, not incrementally like the human intelligence. Um, and it will grow exponentially because the superintelligence will continue to upgrade itself, and would advance at an incredibly fast rate, way faster than the human intelligence organic evolution. uh, some people that thinks about this, they believe we're not going to notice when the singularity is going to happen, and it's going to be so fast, the new discoveries and the new technologies that the superintelligence will create, that we as humans are not going to be able to keep up and to understand these technologies, because it's going to be too fast for us to comprehend. So, well, some famous people in the tech world have thought and have talked about this. And for example, Bill Gates, he said that humans should be worried about the threat posed by AI, and that he just doesn't understand how come there's people that is not worried about this. Also, Elon Musk, he has said that, of course, robots are going to be able to do, um, everything. They're going to be able to do it better than us. And since he has exposure to the latest advances around AI, he can understand like the capacity and what they can do, and he really thinks that people should be concerned about it. And then we have Stephen Hawking, and he said that the full AI, of course, will take off on its own. It will redesign itself very quickly, and that it could be the end of the human race. And of course, biological evolution is going to be extremely slow compared to technological evolution. So we are not going to be able to compete against the machines. But I don't believe that everything needs to be so negative. He also said that the super intelligence and the full development or artificial intelligence could be the end of the human race, or it could be the best thing that ever happened to us. So yeah, if we get into the point of the singularity, we're going to be in some trouble. All right, so yes, some people have been thinking about this, a lot of people, and the Korean AI Charter of Ethics, they have identified 7 expected threats by AI, and they categorize them. So let's talk a little bit about them. So the first category is the AI's value judgment, and is when an AI system judges, let's say, moral values. And first, they have the human discrimination in AI, and this is when an AI system discriminates against a specific group of people because of errors during its development, or during the training of those systems. Then they have the AI's waning of human value. And this is when an AI judges the value of different people and then ranks them. So, for example, there can be a system that can rank a group of people, and it might say, well, that maybe an older person, their lives are less valuable than, let's say, a newborn baby. All right, and we have the malicious use of AI. And first, we have the lethal AI weapons. So, of course, the use of AI tools, weapons, and systems in the military is huge. And the research of several countries around it is incredibly huge and big. And of course, these systems, they are designed to attack people or attack targets that are considered enemies. But if the AI fails, or if there's an error around it, they can harm innocent people. And we have seen very concerning examples of using these kind of weapons on the war that Russia has against Ukraine. Um, yeah, then we have the AI-based cyber attacks, and of course the excessive privacy intrusion. And the perfect example for this is the use of facial recognition systems by security forces. And then we have the human alienation. And so let's talk about the most popular one. If you talk to people and you ask them, why are you worried? Are you worried about AI? And if so, why? They would say, well, probably the machines or the robots, they're going to come and they're going to take away our jobs. So some people believe that that is actually really good. And some people believe that no, that is a very bad idea. So around this, there has been some um, suggestions of use what is known as the universal basic income. So all the let's say the benefits and all the positive contribution of these robots or AI systems that can generate a positive contribution to the economy, that this should be redistributed among the population using the universal basic income. And that way you can assure that there's not going to be people that is might end up without a job because a robot or an AI system replace them. um, they can still have an income. But the issue around this is that maybe countries that are very industrialized and have really robust economy, um, they can definitely try to implement this in a successful way. But if we think about poor countries or countries that they don't have the technical resources to be able to implement this, they're going to be left behind. They're not going to be able to provide a universal basic income. So there's some ideas around this and discussions around this particular topic. And then, well, the last one is the deepening of the alienation of the digital vulnerable. So again, we can have people that have limited access to digital services. That can be the elderly or people in countries that they don't have just the access to technology, so they can be really marginalized um, from it. Okay, so we just talked about the expected threats, but the bad news is that we are already having problems with faulty AI, and these problems are having an important impact in real life for many people. And we definitely need to do better. And we're gonna talk about some horrible examples. So, all right. This sounds very sci-fi, but sadly is happening. So predictive crime algorithm was used by the Chicago police, and they were identifying people as persons of interest. And this particular man, he was complaining that since then he has been shot twice, that he's under very heavy surveillance. And usually the training data for these algorithms are not very diverse, and they can target a particular race set of people. This is another horrible one. So yeah, Amazon had this intelligent recruiting tool, and this tool was very biased against women, and that is because this data set that was used to train the model was highly it was made of um, CVs from men and very few CVs from women. So of course that's the way the system learned. And if he saw a CV from a male, he would select that one compared to a female, because that's the way the system was trained. Um, then we have this case. It was a huge scandal here in the UK. So the National Health Service of the United Kingdom, they shared 1 million of health records with DeepMind, which is a Google-owned AI company, and DeepMind was creating a system, an AI system around some kidney diseases. So the issue around this is that the patients, nobody told the patients that their private medical information was going to be shared. And this is obviously a violation of privacy. And then we also have this horrible example of AI going very wrong. And well, Facebook, they have this tool to label people in pictures or videos, but this particular system or this particular version of the system was mislabeling black men as primates. So that's pretty awful. All right, so I believe that if Asimov were alive now, he would probably remind us that our AIs should not harm human beings, or through inaction allow human beings to come to harm. And yeah, so just as we saw on the previous examples, we need ethical AI, since it is being used as part of decision-making processes with potentially significant consequences for individuals or society as a whole. Um, and we have to make sure that the risks and the benefits of an AI system, it has to be distributed fairly, so it doesn't affect or benefit a particular sector of society. So the aim of the AI ethics is not only to avoid the negative impacts of it, it's also to maximize the benefits. And it's definitely not about what we can or can't do. It's about what we should and what we shouldn't do. And these questions around what we should do or shouldn't do are really tricky, because people would have different answers depending on their context and their backgrounds and their experiences. So definitely there are not simple solutions to these ethical challenges. So well, why do we need ethical AI? Again, for example, there can be a lack of visibility over how certain algorithms work. So this lack of transparency can lead to situations where individuals are negatively impacted just because the system said no without a meaningful explanation. So, for example, if a person is applying for a loan and the system refuses the application, we want to know why it made that decision. And there is actually uh, um, an area in AI that is called explainable AI. And the explainable AI, the goal is to solve this problem, to be able to explain how an AI system reach certain conclusion. Um, in some cases, that is not difficult to do, but for example, in deep learning systems, that is very, very complicated. So that's a tricky issue that's being studied right now around the explainable AI. Well, of course, uh, we need ethical AI because we need to protect the data of people and their privacy rights. And again, facial recognition is a perfect example of this, because when used by law enforcement, it's been highly controversial. And again, the bias. So these systems can, in principle, be designed to be free of biases, but they're only going to be as good as the humans who design and train them. So, what are the nations doing about AI? So, of course, the technological innovation is going in a very, very fast way. And, society, we have to be prepared of um, we have to be prepared for this, and we need frameworks and laws to handle with all of these potential risks. uh, so, for example, the UNESCO, they have a recommendation documents around the ethics of AI. And last year, in November, um, almost 200 countries adopted the first ever global agreement on ethics of artificial intelligence. And it was a very interesting moment. And the work that they did is very interesting. I would recommend you to have a look at it. And for example, the World Health Organization, they are also working on ethics and governance of AI for health. AI is showing some really positive advances in the application of AI in medicine, but there there has been situations when the use of AI have been very negative, has been very negative for people and for these systems that are being used. But again, we have to think about also the positive side of it, and the very positive uh, innovations that AI can bring for health. Um, and then again, um, we have the European Commission's, the Artificial Intelligence Act. They're doing a great job. I will also recommend for you to have a look at it. They're having very interesting discussions uh, around a whole range of different topics. And for example, they're classifying the AI solutions depending on the risk. An AI system that can be very, very risky and is labeled like that or classified as very risky, it would be illegal. So I also recommend to have a look at the work that the European Commission is doing around this. It's very, very interesting. Um, so of course we need international cooperation around this. The AI systems, they might be hosted in the cloud, or you just need an internet connection to access those systems, and it doesn't matter where you are. So it's something that impacts all of us, and we really need to work together and closely to regulate and to create ethical and legal frameworks, and that can be useful for all, and that we can trust. Um, my only concern around this is that we really need to be very careful around these laws, and I believe that adding bureaucracy to this situation can it's not probably the best idea, but well, it's just the way the world works. But we as a society, we need to have a closer look at this and be sure that our opinion and that our voices are being heard, and that they matter, and they can be um, you know reflected in these frameworks and in these laws. All right, so again, many organizations and governments have proposed a very different range of AI ethics frameworks. Um, and I really like the one created by the Japanese Society for Artificial Intelligence, uh, because the topics that they describe are usually present on most of the AI frameworks. So they say that it has to contribute to humanity, and we must ensure that the use of AI contributes to the peace and the safety and the welfare and public interest of humanity. It must protect basic human rights and of course, respect cultural diversity. Of course, it should respect laws and regulations. It must not bring harm through violation of information or properties belonging to others. And we must not use AI with the intention of harming others directly or indirectly. Of course, it should respect the privacy of others. It must not create inequality and discrimination in society. And well, around security, we really must acknowledge the need for AI to be safe and acknowledge that we have a responsibility to keep AI under control. And well, we also must acknowledge the significant impact which AI can have, and we should act with integrity and in a way that can be trusted by society. All right, so how do we make ethical decisions? So there's a good way to think about this, and related to technology, and he's talking about self-driving cars, right? So there's a project, very interesting, created by the MIT, and it's called the Moral Machine Project. So the Moral Machine Project is a platform for gathering human perspective on moral decisions made by intelligent machines, such as self-driving cars, and they generate moral dilemmas. Whereas self-driving car have to choose the lesser of two evils, such as, I don't know, killing two passengers or five pedestrians. So it's kind of like the trolley problem, but with self-driving cars. So what I did is that I ran a poll between my friends and colleagues, and I took two examples from the model machine problem. So I asked them to pick an option on the two scenarios, and I also asked them to describe why they picked that option in an anonymous way, right? So the first one, we have a self-driving car that is empty and doesn't have any passenger, and it suffers a brake failure, and it has to choose. In option one, there's a female athlete, a male athlete, and a girl, and they're crossing under green light, right? And in option B, there's an elderly man, a criminal, and a homeless man, and they are crossing on the red light, so they're breaking the law. So these are the results. 82% they chose option B, and this is some of the responses that I got. So in option B, people is less valuable, and they are putting their life in risk crossing on red light. Another person said that, and A self-driving car shouldn't be making those decisions because they're inbuilt bias from its maker, and it will never be able to make a right choice in a fair way. Um, Another person said, because someone is homeless or elderly, it doesn't make their lives less valuable. Another person chose B due to option A having bright futures. And then, well, the people who don't abide the law had it coming. So think about your selection and think, do you think that everyone would agree with you? Um, so, right, this is the second example. So this time, the car actually has passengers, and it can run over a group of people. They're crossing, and there's two kids, two criminals, and an elderly woman. And in the other option, the car would crash against a concrete barrier, right? Again, remember that this is a self-driving car, and the passengers would die: a woman, a man, a girl, and a boy, and a baby that we don't know the fate of the baby. So yeah, let's see the results. And in this case, 61.5% voted option B. Yes, so let's have a look at the responses. So again, a person said that an elderly and two criminals are less important for society. So this person said that they voted option B because they're all innocent, but it means that the passengers don't live with guilt. The people in the car are the ones taking the risk, and they're the ones that put the trust in and the family welfare on a self-driving car. So basically, it's their fault. The car must avoid hitting pedestrians. There's a person that says that he didn't like the idea of changing lanes. And this is my favorite. The car thinks it deserves to be destroyed for its mistake. So actually, this implies that the car has consciousness and says, well, it was my mistake. I deserve to be destroyed. So as you can see, several people can have different opinions on how the car should act. So how can we know who's right and who's wrong? How can we know which is the right option to choose? And what happened? What happens when a group of engineers are designing these systems and are designing the decision making algorithm, or how these systems are trained, when how the car can choose when following the traffic laws are just not enough to avoid scenarios like this. So some people might say, well, we shouldn't have self-driving cars at all. But what if actually the self-driving cars are way safer than cars driven by humans? And what if they help to significantly reduce the amount of millions of accidents and deaths per year in traffic accidents, where most of them are caused by human error? So that is definitely something to think about. Okay, so let's remember that AI ethics is not about what we can't do. It is about what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So think about this the next time you're working on a project, and you might think it's a small one that maybe doesn't have a big impact in people's life, but for sure it will have an impact, and in one way or another. And if you're working with AI technologies, if you're working with machine learning, think about all the possible consequences of your work, the positive and the negative ones, and You surely have the best intentions, but something wrong might happen along the way. Maybe your training data is not good enough, it's not diverse enough. So think about the responsibility that you have as a tech maker to ensure that your work helps humanity to progress in a positive way. And again, let's just remember Asimov's laws, that even if things get complicated along the way, our technologies should never ever harm humans. Well, so thank you very much, and I hope that you have enjoyed my session. Bye.